Hey everyone, it's Mike from Go Cell Phone Repair for the weekly Monday afternoon, at least where I'm at, live stream where we talk about phone tech. There's all sorts of stuff going on today, probably so much that we may not be able to cover quite everything, but we will try to stick to the important stuff. And of course, any questions or comments that you have. So starting it off, we just found out that Uber will be selling their Southeast operations to a rival, and that doesn't come as a huge surprise. Really, right now, the future of Uber is obviously up in the air. I've got some interesting photos to show you when it comes to that. Apple is supposedly launching 3 new iPhones this year, and they are expecting that one of them, at least, will have Face ID and an LCD, not an OLED display, and they're thinking that could be a big thing in China. So we'll find about that. A smartphone thumb selfie elbow, and a whole bunch of new terms that describe common ailments that have been around for a long time, but we're seeing a lot more of them now, especially in young people who go around holding their phones out in front of their face for long periods of time, staring at screens, pulling their neck down this way to see what's going on. You know how it is. I mean, that stuff, it becomes tedious over time, is causing some health concerns for people. Will a blush gold iPhone boost Apple's iPhone 10 sluggish sales? I guess it really depends on who you ask on that one. We'll get into that a little deeper later on. And we have a guest joining us this Thursday night. You will not want to miss that live stream. I hope that you can show up. It'll be 6 p.m. Same time, same place right here, but on Thursday evening instead of Monday afternoon. And let's get it started right now. All right, guys. My stinger vanished. That's okay. So what's going on? I see we have some people in the chat, and wow, I think that's more than I've seen logged in. Obviously, if you're not signed in, I can't see your name, but I do see Nate. What's going on? Joshua, the Speedmaster. Beha, what's happening? And Nate, regarding the standoff screwdriver, I hope that you enjoyed that. You know, I had mentioned earlier that if anyone sees a product here on the live stream and you end up clicking on one of those links and you buy something from me, so if you make a purchase from Go Cell Phone Repair, I will try to throw in something extra as a token of my gratitude. Now, if you buy it through an eBay link or somewhere else, I won't know that it's you, and you may be buying from another seller that I promote. So if you buy it from me through PayPal on my website, just mention that you saw this advertised on YouTube during a live stream, and I'll try to throw in a little something extra for you there. It's interesting that you say that, Nate. A lot of people just use a Phillips, and you know, you can get those standoff screws out, but if you magnetize those ones that have the point in the center and they're actually made for that job, I believe that you reduce your chances of making mistakes, and we all know how dangerous that can be. Probably not a problem for someone like yourself, but if you have technicians working under you and they're basically just taking the display off and pulling the board and handing it over to you so you can micro solder something, it will make their operation slightly more safe, in my opinion. So I'm glad you're enjoying that. I will try to share as much of that stuff as I can. Like I said, anytime someone makes a purchase here. What's going on? John Cassidy, Harvey's here. Hey, good to see you all. I meant to say guys and gals if I didn't in the beginning. I know we have some female techs out there, so that is really cool. And I'm going to go right over and bring the chat here so that we can all see what's going on. I know that the chat shows up on the YouTube page, but one of the things that we're kind of still waiting for YouTube to do is fix it to where when we edit the video, which I did last week, and I don't know if any of you caught it, but I had my notes visible right up on the screen as I was doing a transition, and it sat there along with one of my login credentials, and I went back and edited that out and changed my password and everything, so it wasn't a problem, but man, that was a sloppy one. I feel bad about that. In any case, Dave Hartley, DJ Wheels 809, what's happening? Hi from South UK. Awesome. Hey, I love that. Hey, he wanted to make sure everybody heard him, right? So check this out, everyone. This, I think, is something that is noteworthy here. Uber is selling out of East Asia, and again, after the publicity that they got on the self-driving car last week, probably not a huge surprise. And unfortunately, I did not prepare these slides, so this is going to look a little goofy, but let's see if we can add this in. I'm going to do it on the fly. Actually, I'll try this preview mode, this studio mode deal. So what happened is that a friend of mine was actually in Arizona the day of this Uber collision, and let's see if we can just set up a slideshow real quick, because I don't want to make you wait too long, but I do want to make this easy for you to see. So he happened to take a picture of an Uber car. Now, I don't know if it's the Uber car, but it is a self-driving Uber vehicle that was in Arizona, and this could very well be the same one that was involved in that fatal accident, unfortunately. So let me see if I can line everything up here real quick. Oh, I can. This is great. This preview mode is awesome. So, just interesting as far as I'm concerned that, let's see, let's move this over here. I'm trying to make it so you guys don't have to see the behind the scenes stuff here. I think we're pretty close on this one. So check this out. This is a friend of mine, and he sent me this. And he had actually, okay, so can we transition over? There we go. So he was staying in Arizona, and he took this photo with his cell phone. He's got an iPhone 10, ironically enough. And again, this is one of the 3 that I've been told, 3 operational at the time Uber cars that were in Arizona. This is what they look like. And of course, if you look at the video that we watched last week, that's pretty much the same car. So again, I don't know if this was the car that was involved in the accident, but certainly the type of car that was used. And I had him send me a screenshot from his phone so you can actually see the date. If you looked all the way up at the top on this next slide, you'll see that he took it on the 18th before that accident occurred. So it is entirely possible that this might have been the vehicle that we saw in that video. So we had a very interesting, in my opinion anyways, discussion regarding artificial intelligence and self-driving cars and that kind of stuff last week. And I'm just waiting to see like what is going to happen in the near future. Like, it's right there. So Uber is also bleeding $1 billion a quarter. Yeah, it would not surprise me. Hey, Fiberbite and Greg M. It would not surprise me at all if Uber, I mean, they were really in a position where they needed to do something to become more profitable. And people have said, I'm going to say allegedly, people have said that they don't compensate their drivers as well as one might imagine. So anyone who I've talked to that's worked for Uber has kind of shared that opinion that they're not really making a whole lot of money. And after you factor in maintenance, tolls, wear and tear on the vehicle, that kind of stuff, it's not a real high paying job. And Uber had to figure out a way to generate even more profit. And sadly, if you want to think of it that way, which I kind of do, the idea was to automate the driving and just cut the drivers out of the whole equation so they could be more profitable. Obviously, they have competitors. They have Lyft here in the U.S. They have this company Grab in Southeast Asia. And right now, especially after this last event that took place, I think they're really going to be questionable as far as their future goes. But, that's just my speculation. Uber is having a lot of lawsuits from the TfL here in the UK. I'm not sure, what does TfL stand for, Fiber? Is that traffic something or other? I would assume it's some sort of government agency possibly. But yeah, it's interesting to see what happened. We saw Uber just blow up and just become huge. And now it's really questionable as to whether they'll be around. And I did mention last week, they had proposed, they wanted to push legislation regarding self-driving vehicles that would prevent people like us, would prevent regular average citizens from having access to these types of cars in within the city limits. So their idea was, hey, we want to have self-driving Ubers and no one else should be able to operate a self-driving car unless it's an Uber vehicle. So obviously a lot of states immediately stood up and said, no, that's not going to happen. And, I would assume that automakers felt the same way. They're trying to probably hold on right now for traditional type cars and, moving over to the self-driving age, if you want to call it that, probably right now, thinking of all of the inventory that car dealers have on their hands and all of the production that's planned for 2018 and 2019 and going forward, if they're not involved in a self-driving vehicle, it's probably to their benefit to, spotlight and to argue using this sort of ammunition, showing that self-driving cars are not infallible and they can cause problem and probably stirring up a lot of panic with people, but maybe rightfully so. Transport for London. Okay, thank you. I was wondering what that was about. So yeah, very questionable. No way to tell for sure what's going to happen, but it will be an interesting one to watch. Now, back to the phone topic. They are saying, and this is from US News, that a new LCD from Apple could be huge in China, and we've been hearing a lot of rumors, and this is the one thing about iPhones and a lot of these companies in general, it's difficult for us to really know what's going on. And if you go to one source, you'll hear that Apple is out selling at record numbers and they've never been more profitable than before. And unfortunately, we don't have access to all of that information. And what just happened here? I need to close that down so you can see what I'm looking at. So it's tough for us to really know how many iPhone 10s let's talk that we're talking about are actually selling or not selling, and people tell you they're succeeding, they're not, whatever. But the bottom line is Apple is still making money. And as far as we know, it sounds like we're going to be looking at 3 different models launching this year. That's what most sources are saying, including our more reliable leaks. And the interesting thing about it that I thought here was that looking ahead, Bank of America is expecting Apple to roll out rear 3D sensing in its 2019 phone models, and suppliers indicate that Apple is developing a foldable phone that may double as a tablet and launch in 2020. And we've been hearing a lot of rumors about this as well, which will be interesting. And whether or not it's going to be a truly folding display that you can just grab your phone and fold it in half, or is it going to be something more along the lines of what we've seen where there's actually 2 separate displays and that allows the phone to fold in half, but you got that big bezel that goes right down the center. But all things considered, I don't think that Apple would choose that latter option. When they say we're going to have a foldable phone, I believe that any Apple enthusiast or anyone who hears foldable phone from Apple would be greatly disappointed if it isn't a truly, edge to edge, one piece OLED that folds in half and then you can open it back up and that'll allow it, I guess, to fit in your pocket. No idea what that's going to mean as far as phone repairs and the components that are inside. So obviously Apple has been filing for patents of this sort and trying to come up with their own design. And I would assume at this point, probably trying to beat their competitors to the punch, before anyone has, because this is something that Samsung has also talked about and kind of teased, as far as what will eventually be available in their phones. But most people are saying that, technologically speaking, at least as far as facial recognition goes, that at this point, Apple is about a good 2 years ahead of everyone else as far as functionality goes. So it seems likely that they will remain dominant in that part of the market when it comes to facial recognition. But, again, anyone could at any time spring a surprise on us and say, look what we got. So who knows? That's the thing about this business. We really don't know how to predict what's going to happen, especially if you have designers and developers who are trying to come up with an idea that they don't want someone else to steal beforehand, right? And at the same time, you want to create that market buzz and say, hey, here's the next best thing. You shouldn't buy what's available now from our competitors. You should wait until, whatever month this year when we're going to be releasing something new and then buy that from us. So I suppose they have to strike a balance between those two things. Self-driving might require tests in the future before you can use it, which might not be a bad thing, though it does sound ironic. Yeah, it does, real world. If it's a self-driving car, I think a lot of people are hoping that you could do things that you wouldn't be able to now. For example, if you can jump in your self-driving car during your commute and get some work done, make some phone calls and not have to worry about paying attention to the road, that certainly sounds like a huge benefit. The potential for, and I know this is a stretch, but potentially we could have impaired drivers off the road all the time. If everyone took advantage of self-driving cars when they were not in a condition to drive, whether that's a lack of sleep, whether they're under the influence of drugs, alcohol, medication, and I know those all kind of fall into the same category because they all affect your ability to drive, but how much safer would the roads be to navigate if you didn't have to worry about those factors, not to mention the distraction factor of things like phone calls and text messages coming through. So, wow, that's how did you do that? That's pretty cool. Dave Hartley. Let's see. Transport for London has Friday informed Uber London Limited that it will not be issued with a private hire operator license after expiry of its current license on September 30th. Oh, that's interesting. And good to know. So there will be no Uber in the UK after their current license expires, is what that sounds like. Okay. Hey, what's going on? I hope I am not going to ruin your name. Kautar? Man, I'm sorry. It would be nice if I could even read phonetically, but trying to translate is tough for me. But thank you for joining us. Good to see. We had more people in here waiting. And the strange thing is that when I go to the watch page, I see more people watching than I do from my live toolbox. So this is kind of bizarre. But anyways, it's awesome that you all joined here. I have a lot of stuff here planned that I wanted to show everyone today. And one of the things, if I've got it lined up here, I think we're going to have to go to a full screen. So if you remember, it might have been one of you in the chat. It could have been Wayne. It could have been, I'm not even sure who, but someone had mentioned or had asked me if I heard any problems with the ambient light sensor on the iPhone 8. I want to say it was the iPhone 8. Yes, iPhone 8. And I've got an iPhone 8 Plus, and something struck me as I was kind of going back and forth messaging the person who had raised this question initially on Reddit, I think it was. He posted in one of the mobile forums talking about problems he was having with an iPhone 8 going back to normal brightness after switching the LCD. So he had retained the original ambient light sensor. The whole front-facing camera was all the same. And no matter what other LCD he attached to the phone, if it wasn't OEM, that sensor would not function properly. And when he put the OEM screen back on, it did. I'm just going to show you because it's going to be more difficult for me to explain. It's easier if you see it. And he did an excellent job here. Let's go over to the full screen here. He did an excellent job of recording this to kind of demonstrate the point that he was trying to get across. Because, of course, as soon as he mentioned this, people started throwing out all sorts of solutions like, did you try this? Did you try this? And he said, look, here's the video. Here's what I tried. And here's what happened. So what we're looking at here, on the left-hand side of the screen, you have the original iPhone 8. Right next to it, he's got what is designed to be a screen replacement without the LCD attached to it. So you've got the front-facing camera, the proximity sensor, the ambient light sensor, all on the top set of cables there. And right next to it, he's got an OEM screen and an aftermarket screen. And what he did here, let's see if, as long as this stays where it's at, we'll be good. Okay, so you can see what's happening is he is going to go ahead and take that sensor, which is built into the phone, and attach it. And I want to say, I may be wrong, but I want to watch this here. I'm not sure that he disconnects the battery, and I just thought of that. So let's watch this for a second. I can't tell. We'll find out here momentarily. I'm not sure if he disconnects the battery on this thing. I assume that he did, but yeah, it's probably going to be hard to tell because it's, you know, kind of obscured there by the display itself. So I would assume that the battery is disconnected at this point before he reattached these cables. And if not, that would probably, yeah, it looks like he's plugging in the battery now. So let's plug in the power. And of course, this is going to take a moment to power up. So we'll give it just a second. Okay, so at this point, this is the OEM LCD. It's been removed. You can see there he's got a replacement screen ready to go. And unfortunately, I can't speed this video up. I suppose I could jump ahead slightly. Let's see if we can just go forward a bit there. Okay, so now we're going to go in and test the brightness controls. And you'll see that as he covers up, let's see, this is probably going to take a moment. Oh, good. Thank you for zooming. See, this is a great way to demonstrate a problem. We can really see what's happening here. So you can see he's manually decreased the brightness, turned on the light outside, and immediately the ambient sensor tells the phone we need to change the brightness on the display to adjust accordingly. So this part of the test is working fine. We know that there's not a problem with the phone itself. There's not a problem with the sensor itself. And when the OEM LCD is attached, everything seems to be working right. Now, I am going to skip ahead here to the point where he has the, so we don't have to watch the whole process. He comes over and we attach an aftermarket LCD. Remember, we've still got the OEM everything else as far as the front camera, and we're going to power it up. Okay, let's go right here. Okay, so right now the phone is booting. So, you know, so far, nothing you can really say as far as here's what I would have done different. I mean, he's turning off the power, presumably disconnecting the battery, going in, and back to the brightness now. This is with the aftermarket LCD. Adjust the brightness, and now when the light changes, this thing should adjust and go back to normal. And as you can see, it's stuck. And he kind of just reached out and said, hey, you know, we're doing LCDs for iPhone 8. I've had a conversation going back and forth with him on my iPhone 8 screen replacement video, and he has tried different vendors, different LCDs, pretty much every variable that you can think of, and found that no matter what happens here, only the OEM LCD is responding. And I don't know at this point if maybe it's something about that particular phone, because everyone I've asked has told me that they are not experiencing this same problem with the iPhone 8 or with any other phone. So I don't know. I'm open to suggestions. I wanted to help him out and say, hey, let's figure it out if we can come up with a solution for you, because it doesn't appear to be just this phone. The impression that I got is whatever phone it is that they're testing, whatever LCD they're using, they're not getting the correct response when they install the aftermarket LCD. Now, interestingly enough, I've got an iPhone 8 Plus, and one of the things about this, if you guys remember a few weeks ago I was talking about, and that is, let's go ahead and get rid of this for the moment, that is that my brightness level has out of the box seemed like it was too bright. So, one of the things that I notice is when I wake up in the middle of the night, and I have to admit I'm guilty, I do this, I don't like to, but you wake up, you can't sleep, you go and you check your email, you read an article until you fall asleep. At least some of us do. What's happening with my iPhone 8 is it blinds me because the room is completely dark, and when you turn that thing on, like I wish I could turn it down lower because I believe I could still see the display. Now that's one part of the problem. The other thing about this phone is that no matter what I have, and the ambient sensor is functioning properly, so it does adjust. When I turn on brighter light, the display gets brighter. When I dim the lights, the display gets dimmer. But no matter what I set the auto lock to on this thing, under the display controls, the display doesn't generally shut off on its own. I have to go manually and turn that off. And this is with all OEM parts. So I don't know if there might be something that we can expect to see as far as problems with the iPhone 8 in particular. I don't know if anyone else out there has come across this issue, but if you have, let me know. The whole idea behind my channel obviously is to help people get repairs done properly, whether you're doing it yourself, whether you're getting someone else to do it. And this particular tech, I believe he's like the manager of a company that does a lot of repairs. I want to say he's from Germany. I'm not 100% on that. And he just reached out and asked, does anyone have any ideas as to what I can do differently to make this work? So if you got them, by all means, and this will be good for all of us. We'll know if there's a problem and how to deal with it if it comes up. All right, I'm going to jump over here to the chat so that I don't get too far behind. If Apple releases 3 phones this year, then that would be 21 different models from the first release. Wow, that is crazy. So that would average out to Apple releasing a phone every 6 to 7 months or every 190 to 195 days, right? If you average them in total, if you counted correctly, right? Yeah, and I'm not going to go back and check your math there, but that is a lot of phones. Mobile, flash, PC best or laptop best? Not sure how to answer that one. Not many people can drive a stick shift car. Now, if they want people to be able to drive at all, yeah, well, I strongly suspect that 10, 20 years from now, we probably won't be driving, and I'm not sure that that will be a choice that we're able to make. Who knows? As you know, I'm not a help on this issue. Sorry, I know many people that adjust the brightness manually. They keep it at the lowest brightness possible. Yeah, I'm keeping mine at the lowest brightness possible most of the time. It's weird. I don't know what is going on with it, but sometimes I'm in a super dark environment, and it's still brighter than it. It's almost blinding because, your eyes are adjusted to the dark, so the screen should dim down. I've got it set to night mode and all that. In any case, that is what it is. So I do want to talk about this again. I know we've had this conversation briefly before, but this is another interesting one. They've got something called smartphone thumb, selfie elbow, and this is happening obviously because people are holding their phones out in front of their faces, and this is not something that humans obviously have evolved to do, and that is hold up anything. If I think I've mentioned this before, but if you think that fatigue isn't a factor, take a 5-pound weight, which is not a lot of weight, and just hold it out in front of you, straight out in front of you, and see how long you can hold it there. For the first 5 minutes or so, it's not bad, and over time, that 5-pound weight starts to feel like a lot more than it is, and that's from the muscle fatigue that we develop by just kind of staying in that stationary position. And obviously this is going to cause some problems from people. We all know about text neck. If you walk down looking at your phone like this, you cause a breakdown of muscle tissue in your neck. And the whole idea of holding a display out in front of your face, whether you're taking a selfie, reading, whatever it is that you happen to be doing, not something that we are naturally evolved to do. We are certainly not designed as humans to stare at something that is one distance away from us for long periods of time. We know this because of computers and TVs and video games and everything else. And now we're doing it with phones. One more screen that's probably emitting some sort of weird radiation or whatever. But now we've got selfie elbow, text neck, and computer eyes, and there was another one. What did I just say? Smartphone thumb. And this is all obviously happening because of the way that we use our phones. And I thought this was one of the funniest ones of all. Texting thumb or gamer's thumb, because as you know, we operate our phones primarily with our thumbs, a lot of us. And tendons in the thumb or at the base of the thumb become inflamed because of repetitive use of the thumb when gripping phones or gaming devices. And it's a funny thing. I remember back when I was a gamer, in real world, thanks for the invite. I've been playing Fortnite on my iPhone 8 Plus, and I'm terrible. So I don't know if that's just me or it's playing the game on a phone, because I haven't played it on a console yet. But let me tell you, playing that game on a phone is, I believe, a lot more challenging than using a controller. But in any case, when we grip these video game devices, phones, anything else, the tendons become inflamed and painful, swelling, and you'll feel a sticking sensation. I can remember that not only from playing video games, but also working on phones. You know, if you have the same repetitive motion you're doing with the screwdriver all day, obviously that takes a toll over time. Probably for those of us who are a little older, we'll feel it sooner than later. We've got selfie elbow, cell phone elbow, or numb pinky finger. And you know what's crazy about this? I don't know about the rest of you, but I have seriously laid in bed reading my phone to the point where I started feeling some numbness in my arm. So obviously it had to do with the position I was in, and I had to change. But this makes me look forward even more to a day when we don't have to hold a device out in front of our faces. I mean, at this point, I would think that this is the next major design evolution that we'll see, and that is a phone that you don't, a display or a HUD or whatever it is going to be, that's in front of your face that you don't have to hold, whether it's glasses or whatever else it ends up being. So what you're saying is that we need floating phones. That, I believe, is the answer. I think that would work. Get a tinted screen protector. Good idea. You know something? It's interesting that you said that, Real World. Gave me an idea and actually made me think of something kind of funny. Why don't we have helium balloons that we just attach our phones to, and then they float around in front of our faces? Or how about a drone that carries your display around instead? Maybe if we can make it silent. I don't know. Yeah, probably would never catch on. But I strongly suspect that cell phones as we know them, will not be the way that we are imagining them to in the future. I think they're going to be a lot different. Do you use Apple schematics and or board view? Yes, technical question. I do use a combination of both, Dave. I'm using the ZXW dongle tool at this point in time. I do use Apple schematics on occasion, and for the most part, depending on what it is that you're doing, in many cases you can find the information that you need by using the board view, but it certainly doesn't hurt to have the schematics on hand. If so, where would I recommend getting them from? Well, you can go to my website, Go Cell Phone Repair, and if you look under Diagnostic Tools, go to the Tools section, go to Diagnostic Tools, and you can find the ZXW dongle. If you're talking about schematics, all I can say is that it is not okay to sell or trade them because they have copyrights that apply to schematics in particular, and Apple, at least at this point, is not required by law to disclose that to us. So most of those schematics can be found the same place that other things on the internet can, and Google is your best friend for that. So if you're looking for information, and this is a tip that I give to everyone, and I know this isn't directly for you, Dave, but I get a lot of people who ask me, where do I get this? How do I find this? Where do I do this? I got to tell you, it's slightly more difficult to operate nowadays than it used to be because so many people are competing to get ranked. But Google still, if you have time and patience, and sometimes you have to dig a little ways to get there, but you can usually find the information that you're looking for one way or another through there. And I'll put a link to the ZXW dongle tool and to the rest of my tools and supplies down in the video description, along with the links to all of this information that I'm talking about today, because obviously we want to credit the people who wrote these articles. And I'll leave that part at that. So next we have a question for all of you. Do you think that making a blush gold iPhone will be exciting enough to boost iPhone 10 sales? And this, I don't know why it makes me laugh, and at the same time, I suspect that maybe it will help boost the sales, because it doesn't take much in the way of Apple products to generate excitement. Anything that they do that they haven't done yet, if you have someone that's loyal to that company, they tend to get excited about it. So I wonder if a blush gold iPhone 10 is going to be a big deal. This is what we're talking about here. And again, you got to take these with a grain of salt, but it says sluggish iPhone 10 sales not helping Apple stock. In the midst of general tech sell-off, Apple stock lost nearly 7% last week. Now we know that we're kind of in between products at the moment. They are talking about releasing a less expensive MacBook Air, and tomorrow is the big Apple education event, so we'll be following that to see if anything interesting comes up or materializes from that. But the bottom line, I think, for Apple right now, and people will argue me on this, and that's fine. Simply my opinion, I don't believe that the iPhone 10, the Face ID, I don't believe was as exciting for the general public as they might have expected. I know that a lot of people do like it. I know that a lot of people use it. But from my perspective, I got to tell you, the wireless charging was way more impressive when it comes to functionality. That's something that I actually use. Now, there are lots of reasons why a generation that is excited about emojis and Snapchat and that kind of stuff might be steered more towards the iPhone that offers those features, but we're talking about $1,000 phone. So to put that into perspective, let's say we're looking at an age group of, 12 to 25. A large percentage of that age group is not going to have the type of discretionary income that it requires to buy $1,000 phone. So, unless they're starting off in debt and financing it, that's a lot of money to take out of pocket. And I have a feeling that, with most of these companies, a lot of the money, whether the iPhone is, whether the product is being bought by the user or is being bought for the user, a lot of times that money is coming more from like the 25 to 35 age group, because that's where we see most of the marketing targeted when it comes to high dollar items as far as technology stuff goes. So I don't know that people from 25 age group and up are quite as excited about that feature. Maybe they are. I could be completely wrong, but so far, at least in the conversations that I've had and the articles that I've read, it doesn't seem like the whole Face ID and the emoji feature created as much excitement as people were expecting. It's certainly a nice looking phone. There's no arguing that. But as I was having the conversation very recently, the one thing that I still don't get to this day, and this is after watching real world reviews, iPhone 10 camera lens replacement, which we probably all hope that we'll never have to do after seeing that. Why not design a camera lens that has something that protrudes just slightly further than the lens does, so that when you set your phone down, it's less likely that the glass is going to make contact with the surface that would cause it to become scratched or cracked or broken or anything like that. And we probably all know the answer, and that is that phones are not necessarily made to be indestructible. And of course, the more durable you make them, the less likely it is that you're going to be able to offer your customer a replacement or a repair service that they pay for long term. So we kind of know the answer to that. But I did see a product recently that I thought was genius. It's a small chrome piece that snaps onto your camera lens, and it just goes right around the outside, and it sticks out far enough so that you have some protection there, and they're only a couple dollars. So I think for those that hold out and say, you know what, I don't want a case on my phone, everyone wants to go naked with my phone. I understand, it certainly adds bulk and it adds weight to it, and it doesn't look as nice, and you don't get to see the backside of the phone, and you see a big, whatever the case is. So I get that, but at the very least, I think that a bumper or protecting the camera lens somehow should probably be on your list if you're concerned about causing damage to your phone. So let's take a look here at the comments before I get too far behind here. More like trash gold. You are crazy. Babla never die. Bobby and never die. I don't know. Evening. How's it been? Hey, Piano Sam, what's going on? It has been a week already, or did I talk to you on the Thursday evening stream? If not, then wow, it has been a week. It flies by, I gotta tell you. You are crazy. MCEE never die. Okay. Do you know if there's a piece of hardware or software that will instantly unlock iPhones? There is not, Dave. Well, no, I take it back. There actually is. There is something that we loosely call a turbo SIM or a GV SIM adapter, and off and on those will work. So I've actually got one in my phone right now, and this is going to be a terrible way to demonstrate it, but what I'm going to do, see if we have a SIM card ejector. You've probably seen these before, but I will attempt to use this camera here and show you. First of all, I don't know what you're talking about. What is MCEE? Let me go ahead and turn this off and grab my SIM card ejector just in case anyone hasn't seen these before. And I am currently using something just like that. One sec. So this is a hardware adapter, Dave, that we don't love to use. And here's why. In many cases, an iPhone update will prevent this adapter from working. So that means if you sell one to a customer and they update their phone, they're going to say, my phone's not unlocked anymore, and you're going to have to tell them that it's going to stay that way for a while. And if they want their money back, you're kind of stuck in a bad position because you want the customer to be happy. But once you program these things, they're programmed to the phone that they're installed in. So if you want to take a look, I don't know how well this is going to work on this camera, but I've got my SIM card tray here with my SIM inside of it. And if you flip it over, hopefully you can see these tiny little contacts on the back. And what you're looking at there is a small piece right here. I'm going to take it out. So this little guy right here, that is why my phone is unlocked. So this is a hardware solution that you can use for iPhones, and they do make them for other models. And what you have to do is very carefully install this thing into your SIM card reader. Whoops, and I just dropped it. So anyways, I'll have to come back to that. I don't even, oh, there it is. You put it into the SIM card reader, put the SIM card on top of it, enter a code when the phone starts up. Depending on the version of iOS that you have and whether or not it's supported still, you can often unlock phones. For example, I've got a Sprint phone here that I am using on AT&T, and it would work with any GSM carrier once that adapter is installed. Now, if I have that adapter in the phone and I upgrade to a new iOS, there's a good chance that that will put it back into locked status. So it's kind of a hardware workaround. Beyond that, there is no machine that you can plug an iPhone into and reprogram it in any way that it would be unlocked, because all of the unlocking information has got to be confirmed by Apple. So when you do an unlock on your phone, your carrier authorizes it, or you pay for an unlock service somewhere, you have to connect your phone to iTunes, and that will prompt iTunes to connect to the server at Apple in Cupertino, check the information on your phone, make sure that your unlock is authorized, and then it will unlock the phone through iTunes, as you probably already know. And once it does that, it is a permanent unlock. But we don't have that option for every phone, and we certainly don't have any type of machine that can do that. If you did, you would probably be quite wealthy at this point. Let's see. An Apple logo with a fingerprint scanner would be awesome, but then a glowing logo would be impossible. And you know something, real world? I was thinking just the other day, how sad. Oh, I wanted to show you guys another thing that I'm going to have to, maybe I can reach it from here. One sec. I wanted to show you guys something that I put on hold a long time ago. Let's see, where'd it go? I'm going to have to get up again. In any case, I'll grab it momentarily. I finally finished, I know this sounds crazy, I had an iPhone 5 that I started to do a glowing logo mod on way back in the day. So I've got my iPhone 7, I've got an iPhone 6, and I've got an iPhone 6 Plus, all with the glowing logos. One of them has a flashing deal. They have different features. But I had started to do an iPhone 5 flashing logo, and the phone stopped working. So I had some stuff I was working on this weekend. I went and took a look inside, got the phone working, turned it on, and now this iPhone 5, if I can find it, has a glowing logo on it. And it's pretty cool the way that it works. If you turn off the display, the logo only stays illuminated for about 10 seconds and then it shuts off. So the thing that I was worried about, and that was battery drain, is not an issue. And obviously those LEDs take up such a small amount of amperage that it's not even, I shouldn't say it's insignificant, but it's such a small draw on the battery that it really doesn't cause anything that anyone would notice the difference on, if that makes sense. I'm going to have to figure out what this guy's talking about here because I don't know. Acraf? MCEE? GeoHot probably has an unlocking machine. You think so? Because I don't know how he would get around. Maybe he has some way to spoof the Apple server. I would have a hard time believing that, just because of the fact that Apple's encryption just for storing data on the phone is so complex. That they only recently figured out how to get past the password with this new machine, this gray shift or whatever it is. But who knows? Maybe there is something there. Any idea why the SIM card in this phone wouldn't eject when the phone was open? Worked first time when it was fully closed. Any idea when the SIM card in this phone today wouldn't eject when the phone was open? Oh, I see what you're saying. So you had the screen off and you couldn't get the SIM card to eject. I would assume it's the same as when we run into that. Sometimes the SIM cards do get hung up on those little contacts on the inside. And of course, if you force them, they want to snap right off. So what I'll typically do inside the phone, if I have the phone open, I probably should grab one. If I had the phone open and I can see the SIM card tray in the logic board, I will take my finger and put pressure over the entire SIM card, okay, so that I'm covering the entire SIM card inside the phone, and push down so that hopefully it's depressing those little contacts on the inside, and see if it wants to move a little easier that way. Outside of that, it's just be very careful, because obviously once you damage those SIM card readers, that is a big pain to have to replace, especially on an iPhone. But I couldn't tell you why. My assumption would be a misalignment of the SIM card. Maybe it was put in there wrong, or maybe it's just worn down those contacts, and previously someone got one snagged and it lifted up a little bit. I've seen that happen a few times. Future TriStar Repairs Inc. Future TriStar Repairs Inc. I don't know about that one, and I'm wondering what it's going to be like. I haven't done a TriStar on anything beyond an iPhone 6s at this point. So as far as the 7, I want to say that's the one that where they introduced the Hydra chip, and I don't know what that's like. I haven't had to do, unfortunately. Hopefully not anytime in the near future, but I don't want to talk myself out of a job now, do I? So what do we have next here? We have a vulnerability in iOS camera QR code reader that could direct users to malicious websites. Now, this one was kind of interesting, because what they're saying is that you can come across a QR code and scan it, and it might tell you that the phone's browser is being directed to, let's say, Facebook. That's the example that they gave. But it could be, in fact, directing you to a malicious website. And we know that we've had some problems with bugs on the iPhone, specifically when you go to certain websites. If you remember, about a year and a half ago, maybe even more, we had the iPhone tech support browser hijack for Safari, where when you went to the browser, it would basically take over, and it made it look like your phone was stuck and you couldn't get past that screen no matter what you did. And fortunately, you could close the browser, go into settings, clear your history, and if all else fails, reboot the phone, and you could get past that one. So more recently, we had the Indian character that was causing phones to crash when people texted it to you. So obviously, there are so many different variables that exist. There's no way that they can test a phone completely, especially the way that they push these things out as fast as they can. So we never know what's going to cause your phone to lock up, crash, get some sort of ransom virus on it or something like that. So apparently you can have that experience just by scanning the wrong QR code. I suppose the solution is to be careful what you scan and make sure you trust, obviously anything that you're encountering. But I believe that this is something we are going to see more and more often, because of the fact that so many people have switched over, whether it's from Windows to Mac OS or OS X, and whether it's because people have switched from Android or non-smartphones over to Apple products to using iOS, that at this point in time, it is becoming a sensible thing for people who do hacking, and for people who do things like ransom viruses, and people who create malicious code, to start to target Apple products, because there's so many of them out there. And historically, we always kind of thought of Apple as being immune to viruses and being worry-free for the most part, and hey, it just works, and you turn it on and there's no problems. And of course, that was at least partly due to the lack of popularity based on the price point and the amount of market share that Apple had at that time. And now that Apple has grown so much and so many more people are adopting their devices, I think that we're going to see a lot more problems when it comes to malicious codes and things like that. MCE is a club of football in Africa, and means okay, and it means something else that is not in English, but hey, cool, good for you. Where's the review of USB microscope? Hey, technology man, you wanted me to tear that thing down and see what it looks like on the inside, right? I am absolutely going to do that if it is possible, and if it happens, it should be this week. And the reason I say that is I do not want to destroy that microscope. So assuming they've designed it in a way that I can disassemble it without damage, I will absolutely take it apart and we'll get a look at that lens. So I would say we should be seeing that this week. That's my plan. I will do my best. And let's see. So beyond that, let's go over here, because we have a lot on the list today and I want to get through these, and there's only 15 minutes left. Time is flying. So Xiaomi Mi A1 review. Here is a $220 iPhone clone with stock Android. So apparently, and this is ARS Technica or Ars Technica. I never know how they say that. This is a phone that is creating a lot of buzz. The downside, of course, is going to be that here in the US, at least, it is becoming more and more difficult for us to or it should become more difficult for us to find imported phones because, we have all sorts of powers that be saying don't buy Chinese phones anymore, which is kind of unfortunate. A lot of the competition that we could be seeing here may be going away, with Huawei losing deals and these other companies, ZTE, and pretty much anyone that is manufactured in China. Not to mention this trade tariff war that we might be going into. So here's the design and build specs. And again, this is from ARS Technica. We're talking about a 1920 by 1080 display, IPS LCD, 403 pixels per inch, Android 8.0, Oreo out of the box, 8-core Qualcomm Snapdragon 625, 4 gigs of RAM, Adreno 506 GPU, 64 gigs of storage, and so forth. And you can see the rest of the specs here. Again, check the article in the video description if you want to read the entirety. The reason that I wanted to mention this was twofold, and that is because this Thursday we have a guest coming on to talk about all kinds of phones that aren't Apple and that aren't Samsung. And in fact, we probably won't be talking about a lot of the phones that we're used to seeing here. Some of them, yes, but mainly let's pull up his channel real quick. So I'm going to close this because I want you guys to see what I'm talking about so you'll know what to expect. And I need to go to his channel real quick and let's see, what do we have in the comments? Guys, what preheater must I buy for GSM repair? And that is a great question, Marek, because I'm thinking about getting a preheater as well. I think that would be a good investment for board repair. So, oh boy, this is going to be tricky for me to do. Let's try this. Okay, here we go. I think I can get his channel right here. So, let's go here and it's going to show up. Yes, it is. All right, so we will have Z from Z Reviews Tech. You should absolutely check out this gentleman's channel. He's going to be joining us 6 o'clock this Thursday evening to talk about phones, budget phones, imported phones, all sorts of phones that aren't from Apple and aren't from Samsung, because we talk about that all the time, right? We hear about these in the news all the time. He has got so many, this channel it'll blow your mind. He's got information about phones that come from China, the way the market works. He just did a video 2 days ago about China hacking the US, and does an excellent job of representing both sides of the argument, looking at it objectively, and talking about the interactions between imported products, how they get here, what they go through, how they're manufactured. Take a look at the channel if you get a chance. Bring your questions for Z. He will be here again on Thursday this week, 6 p.m. And Go Sell From Repair. Do I need to buy a ZXW, or should I just use the pad schematic software? And also, where can I get Samsung phone schematics? If they come from, okay, so here's the thing, technology man, I will say this, I have not used pad schematics myself. I have seen how they work, and I started to download a bunch of their, I think they're called BDS files or something like that, and then there was something else I had to install to get it working. I don't have hands-on experience with it because, to get right to the point, I had already purchased ZXW. I do plan on doing a comparison between those two in the future, so if you're not in a hurry, that is on my list of ideas because I want to be able to show what we have. We have ZXW, we have pads, we have another one out there right now that I just came across. There's at least 3 or 4 different board views out there. I can't tell you about pads because I haven't used it yet. I would assume that if it's free, which is my understanding, it's certainly worth a try. Download it, check it out, see if you like it. But that is on my list as well as the microscope teardown, so I can't really answer that yet. If anyone out there has experience with pads, feel free to chime in. I had already got my ZXW, and it actually expires in June, so I'm not really under pressure to get any alternative in place between now and then. But it would be interesting to see how it works, so I'll try to answer that for you better next time. Good luck. Okay, so what do you think about this? This is an opinion question as well. Why banning cell phones? I can hardly even read the print on this thing the way they made it. Why banning cell phones in schools misses the point. And, there's all sorts of talk about having no phone rules in schools. Various opinions as to what grade is appropriate and when kids should and shouldn't be able to have their phones at school. There it goes. Now we can actually see the headline. And, and sorry, about the Samsung schematics, you have some of them with ZXW. In fact, I've got ZXW installed on this machine, so I could tell you, if you all bear with me just a second, oh no, I don't. I'm on my Mac. I'm sorry. ZXW has a lot of Samsung schematics. There are probably more, if not as many, that they don't have. So it really depends on what you're dealing with. But if you have a popular Samsung or a flagship Samsung, you'll probably find a lot of that on ZXW. But if it's an older, more obscure phone, they don't have them. If you want to know a specific model, put a comment under the video, and after this is finished, or if you want to put a list of models or you're curious, put a comment in the video description. Beneath the video, and I'll go and check ZXW after we finish the stream, and I can probably tell you if it has what you're looking for or not, if it's like just a couple of phones. But they do have some Samsung schematics on ZXW. They got some Motorola or Lenovo. They've got LG, I want to say, in limited quantity, and they've got a lot of import phones also. They've got like Xiaomi and stuff like that, if I remember correctly. So there are some Samsung schematics there. Now, as far as Samsung schematics on the web, I have had a more difficult time in finding those. And I got to tell you, for the most part, I don't do a lot of board level repairs on Samsung, you know, beyond charging ports and filter, you know, like display filters that are right up where the pop connector is attached. I haven't done a whole lot of work on Samsung phones. So again, anyone out there has a suggestion as to where to look for Samsung schematics. I have had trouble finding a lot of them, especially with the older phones when people come in for data recovery. So that is the downside. So, you know, to kind of summarize this article, though, what they're saying is that regardless of any rules that are put into place, students and teachers tend to get around them. So they're going to end up with cell phones in schools regardless of the rules. And you know, good or bad, it looks like this is not really something that's avoidable. So how do you, how would you as a parent feel about this? You know, at what age should your child have a phone, and at what age should your child be taking a phone to school? And furthermore, should the school be able to say, okay, in classroom, no phones? And if so, is that even enforceable? Like, I don't even know. And I can already imagine making exceptions. Let's say you have a child with a health condition and they're using an app on their phone to monitor something or to remind them that it's time for some sort of medication or who knows what. You know, there are all sorts of things that you can think of that would be used as a justification to have a smartphone in school. And not to mention that so many schools are using tablets now anyways. You know, you go to a lot of schools and they have a tablet budget. You know, each kid has to have an iPad or an iPad mini or something like that. So, I don't know that there is a solution, and I don't know that cell phones in schools could ever go away, even if we wanted them to, or if we put a policy in place that said that you can't have a cell phone in school. And is it even a good idea? I don't know. You know, I suppose if it's distracting other students or if it's taking away from education, yes. If it's a public school and we all pay for public schools through our property taxes, then should voters have a right to go to the school board? Should this be something that's on the an election ballot, or not an election ballot, but on a ballot that people can vote for? Like, I really don't know. Harvey, I teach an after-school program, and we ban all cell phones for students. I'm interested to hear the details on that. Have you run into any problems where the kids are told you can't have a phone in school and they show up with it anyways, or they sneak it in? And if so, you know, what happens? Are they penalized? You know, do they get detention? Is there some sort of corrective disciplinary measures that are taken, or do you just have to take their phones away from them? I'm really curious to hear that. And have you had any parents say, no, I need my kid to have their phone in school so that I can contact them or something like that? I don't know. I think there are a lot of questions here. And, you know, along with the whole self-driving car and autonomous vehicle and artificial intelligence conversations, we have this. We have smartphones going with people everywhere and, you know, being used in places that you wouldn't expect them to. And, you know, one side of the argument is that, you know, when you go to a meeting or a movie theater or a church or a number of other places, you turn the cell phone off and you put it away. And that's just common courtesy. But if we relied on common courtesy for everything, then obviously a lot of us would not behave the same way that other people do. So I don't know how you would deal with that. And good for you, Harvey, man. That would be, I think, a tough one. It probably depends on how intimidating you are to the students, I imagine. Random question, no problem, Piano. For a random question, have you seen the custom modified iPhone videos by Strange Parts? I have. And in fact, someone made a suggestion that I try to get him to come on a live stream for an interview. So he is on my list. I will see if I can get a hold of him, and if he'd be willing to show up, that would be cool. And if he does, I'll let you know in advance. This is the guy that goes to China and builds his phone from odds and ends, right? Like he built his own phone in China. I did see that, and I will certainly contact him and see if we can get him on here. It should be an issue as same as the graphing calculators. Good point. I had not even thought about that. So if it is used, I just take it and bring it to the main office. It's a huge distraction. I don't even allow a calculator. Okay, just curious, Harvey, if you don't mind me asking, you don't have to answer this, but what age group are we dealing with for that? Yeah, that guy, it's awesome. Let me know if he comes on. I absolutely will. Piano, I have a whole lot of interesting guests that I want to get on. And as I stated earlier, I want to make sure that they will be appropriate for this audience and that we have an audience for them when they get here. So I have a few that I'm working on, and it all kind of depends on the direction that just this channel goes and a number of other factors. But certainly the Strange Parts guy would be an interesting person to have on. So I'll see if I can get a hold of him in the near future. Along beside the distraction factor, if the access to information became ubiquitous, then there will be the demise of libraries. That's another kind of sad thing. You know, the whole idea that libraries might eventually go away, and probably another topic that we should cover in the future in depth, and that is librarians protecting internet access to people who would not have it without the internet, and in addition to that, protecting the privacy of people who want to use the library to access the internet. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on with that, and we wouldn't nearly have enough time to scratch the surface on today. But you know, when you think about a library, I will say this, that when people talk about newspapers and printed books, obviously what we're doing is cutting down trees to make a record of a text-based of text-based information that we don't need to do anymore. We can put it on a screen, we can store it on a file. We certainly don't need to cut down trees and press them into paper and throw them on people's porches, or fill libraries at this point in time. But for the libraries that exist today to go away, I think would be a detriment, just to our society as a whole. So I hope that doesn't happen. 5th grade, various ages 6 to 11. Kids are very intelligent these days. Oh yeah, tell me about it. Kids are probably much smarter than me, a lot of them. Okay, so yeah, that guy's awesome. All right, so let's go over to this one. Apple is ready to fight Google's Chromebooks with cheaper iPads. I mentioned this a little earlier in the stream, and Apple has been seeing Google these. I gotta say, I don't know how I feel about these. The Chromebooks are okay, but they don't have. The first thing that every salesman I talk to says is, oh, you're looking for a laptop? Check this out. It's a Chromebook. It doesn't have Windows on it, so it doesn't have a traditional operating system, and it's limited as far as what sort of applications you can run. And I'm sure that over time that will change. For me, it's not practical. You're not going to plug in your ZXW tool to your Chromebook, obviously. But for people who are browsing, are looking at emails, and just need limited access really to internet, in general, these can be a good alternative. Apple is preparing to launch a $259 budget iPad model this year. And of course, that we know that they are launching a cheaper MacBook Air, or at least have been talking about it. So that will be interesting. And as far as tomorrow's event, it sounds like Apple is really focusing on getting back into the schools again. And for a long time, I've kind of thought that if you take a look back into like the late 70s, early 80s, or mid 80s probably, Apple was big in the schools, and they kind of positioned themselves to plant that seed, to get people used to using Apple products at that point in time. And then, a decade, 2 decades later, we start to see that was a good idea, because as people matured, they're used to the operating system, and they tend to prefer to use Apple products. So that certainly worked out for them. We'll have to see what happens here, especially now that they have, some sort of competition, it looks like. Los Angeles Unified School District, let me go back here. Back in 2015, Apple was forced to pay $4.2 million to the LA Unified School District after a $1 billion program to provide all of LA's 640,000 school kids with an iPad went spectacularly wrong. Students had issues typing on the iPad screen, some were circumventing browser restrictions, and it was clear that administering iPads wasn't an easy task. But apparently they're going to try to get back into that. And I'll say, to this day, it blows my mind that if you put a computer, or if you put a child of, say under the age of 4 in front of a computer, they don't go for the keyboard. They go for the screen. So everything is touchscreen. The whole idea of a keyboard is foreign to a lot of kids at this point in time. So things are changing quite a bit. iPad X, no, huh? All right, let's see. So we are running out of time. Mac Rumor says this year's iPhone 10 and iPhone 10 Plus could start at $899 and $999 respectively. And that would surprise me. I'm thoroughly expecting that Apple will lower their prices at least a couple $100, I hope. I mean, if they really want to get back, they have the market share, but to get the sales back in line with what they've been historically, I think I could be completely wrong, but I think that people are going to be looking at something more in the $700-800 range rather than a $1,000 phone. But hey, they could come out and do a $1,500 phone. We really don't know. I'm not going to dig too deep into that one because it is 3 o'clock, and I'm sure you all want to get back to work pretty soon. Once again, rumors of a foldable Apple iPhone to be released by 2020. We will see what happens with that. And again, my question is, what are we talking about exactly when we say a foldable phone? Is it really going to be a foldable display? And if so, what do? Put the battery on one half, put the logic board on the other half, and then they sandwich together? I don't know. It seems like it would make a lot more sense for a tablet. Dave, thanks for joining us. I'm going to try to wrap this up shortly here, everyone. Time just flies by so fast when I get on these things. So once again, please keep in mind this Thursday, 6 p.m., we're going to have Z from Z Reviews Tech. This guy, I've had a conversation with him. We're getting set up. We are going to format this thing to make it as entertaining and informative as possible. Really planning this one out so we can go into topics that you're interested in. By all means, bring your questions about other brand phones, bring your questions about budget phones. We've had people kind of throwing this thing around here saying, 2018 may be the year of the budget phone. Maybe people have had enough of these $1,000 flagships and they're looking for something that's similar and that gives them the big screen that they want, that gives them a fingerprint scanner, that gives them Face ID, but they don't need to break the bank to do it. And it looks like a lot of these other companies are concentrating on that. So that will be interesting to see. I'm very excited to have Z come and join us. And I am going to sign off here momentarily. I'll leave the chat open for a few more minutes. And until Thursday or next Monday, whenever I see you next time, have a great week, and I will talk to you soon.